Soumya garu, we can start Andy.
Sure, thank you, Andy.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining the call. My name is Sirisha Akineni. I am the General Secretary of Houston Telugu Cultural Association. We also have Geeta Korampalli, President, and Kiran Nekkanti, Web and Communications of Houston TCA. The main purpose of this call is to provide high-level overview of data governance and data privacy. This session is intended to students or professionals that are looking for a career change. Let me introduce TCA. Telugu Cultural Association is a 43-year-old non-profit organization advancing Telugu language, culture, and heritage here in Greater Houston area. TCA has sub-organizations like Telugu Buddy for learning Telugu, Nelnela Venela for poetry and literature, Swaramadri for all types of music. TCA provides scholarships every year for students with the help of sponsors and community leaders. This year, due to pandemic, we have hosted several sessions on yoga, Bhagavad Gita, health, immigration, and visa issues with subject matter expert. Let me invite Nikita Korampalli to introduce our speaker, Soumya Teja Garu.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to TCA's webinar on data governance and data privacy. Our speaker today is Sowmya Teja Kandregula. Soumya is an advisory board member of ADCG and a seasoned data management professional with over 14 years of experience in data governance, data privacy, data security, regulatory compliance, metadata management, master data management, and service management and agile project management. Soumya's proficiency is developing cohesive solutions for large and complex projects spanning multiple divisions and platforms. He has a wealth of knowledge in building solutions that enable flexibility yet stability, an important component of software delivery for regulatory programs. Soumya advocates about growing sets of data demands, including a changing landscape of privacy laws, increased movement of data onto the cloud, and a greater dependency on quality governed data for machine learning and AI solutions. Soumya is an intent listener, a great storyteller, and follows creativity to express his subject expertise. He has mentored more than 1,200 enthusiasts across the globe to get into the IT space to become future leaders. He strongly believes in an innovative approach of thinking and learning via questioning. Now, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Soumya.
Thank you, Nikita, and a very warm welcome to all of you, and a good afternoon. First of all, before we jump into that, I would like to thank Mr. Ram Cheruvu, Geeta Garu, Sirisha Garu, and Kiran Garu for this opportunity for me to speak at HTCA. And without further ado, and again, special thanks to Nikita in giving the great introductions. So let's quickly deep dive into it. And in today's session, we're going to talk about a variety of aspects related to data management. And I ended up putting an agenda for the people out there that you will have an opportunity to ask your questions. But on a high level, we're going to speak about what is data governance, the importance of data, and why data governance is important, and how enterprises build data governance, and how it is actually defined, right? And there are some misconceptions around it. We're going to talk about it so as the framework and the operating model, and the roles involved in data governance processes and skills it takes for all of you to be successful in the data governance space as an analyst or as a developer. We're going to talk about those and some of the popular tools implementing data governance. And we would also like to talk about the certifications you can do, or the associations which will enable you or further gives you more knowledge about data governance and the average DG analyst salary across the United States, and any questions you may have, I will take those questions along the process. And the way I would like to do this, I would love to keep it as interactive as possible. So in that case, if you have any questions, I would request you to type it in the chat room. I'm not quite sure if the audio is enabled for you. If not, our moderators shall enable the audio for you, so you can ask your questions on the way or at the end. It's completely up to you, right? So now let's get into it. I've been showing and we've been keep telling what is data governance, how one can kickstart their career in the data governance space. And before I talk about now uh, the prospects around data governance, and let's just talk about the basics first, right? Let's talk about what is data governance. Right now, this is an important question. You might I'm pretty sure you must heard about this verbiage a lot lately, especially with all the elections going around and what happened in 2016. The general elections. Data has been in the limelight, right? So the GDPRs or the new regulations came within the United States. Everyone's talking about the data, and the enterprises across the globe, they're considering data as an asset, right? And being said that, let's talk about data governance in general. And before we would get into that, let's quickly see what is governance. For me, governance is nothing but making decisions, right? So take our president or take our governors. All they do is they govern the specific state or the country, right? It's what they're doing. They're making decisions on behalf of us or for the people who have voted out. Now, apply the same concept to data governance. Now, data governance is all about making decisions using your data, right? So at the very high level, now if an enterprise can have a great data governance structure in place, you will tend to make better decisions. So the better decisions yield the better revenue for the enterprises. Given that, now let's quickly see the importance of data, right? So we spoke about it a moment ago that enterprises considering data as an asset, right? So data is of course is an invaluable asset for any enterprise. So more than tangible and intangible assets for any business, the most valuable asset is data lately, as it helps guide the businesses to take some strategic decisions, right? And remember that your decisions will decide the future course of your enterprise. That's typically how data-driven decision making has been in the limelight, and now probably most of the corporates, if you see out all the Fortune 500 firms, they strongly rely on the data. Right now, what happens if you are actually relying on data? Right, how can data help enterprises? If you could see my screen, it can help us in reducing costs, it, and data helps us in increasing the speed, the way we as our employees or the enterprise users function. And there is a continuous improvement process. You know what are your drawbacks are, you know where you have to improve at an enterprise wide, so as the collaborative decisions, it will enable you to take it, right? And of course you can plan better. Now, if I know that, as simple as that. Now, think about this specific Zoom call. If I know my participants are more than 100, I certainly won't be able to host all of them in one Zoom session. So that's where the quick data can help us. Okay, now I have 250 users who are going to participate in this particular session. So I might need a premium account with Zoom, or might not need it. If I don't have 100, I might not need to spend money. So you're certainly saving money there, right? A quick example just from the session where we are in. I'm going to take you further into it, just talk more about the governance aspects around it, and why data governance is important, right? Now look at the image on your screen, right? Imagine you are the person in this picture. Now you want to rent a book from a library, right? So let's assume the librarian is not around and there is no index. And be rest assured that you will spend an eternity before you find the book of your choice. I'm pretty sure I've been there multiple times, and I was unsuccessful in finding the book I wanted. But now apply the same concept to an enterprise or to an organization, right? So if an organization doesn't have a data governance in place, the chances are you will spend eternity to find a credible source of your data. Like I mentioned before, when you are unsure about the credibility of your data source, chances are you are taking a big risk. And we have seen over the period of time enterprises doing amazing business and now by not knowing what set of users they are targeting. Right, at times, you take example, Amazon as a great business case, right? So they are completely a data-driven enterprise. They know the numbers, they have a structure around it, and they govern their data to take appropriate decisions. Right. So now, if you're searching for a Harry Potter book, I'm pretty sure now you will spend a lot of time in finding it. Now think about it now as a scenario. What if the data governance is implemented? What if there is a librarian, right? And the books are available in an indexed manner, right? Alphabetically or a genre wise. You will find your book very easy, isn't it? Data governance is exactly the same. So data governance is all about ensuring that your data is structured or properly maintained in a logical manner. And remember, data governance is ensuring that data is stored at the right place, right people have access to the data, and the right data is being used by management for decision making. There are plenty of examples. Now we can talk about it, which we will see in the further slides. But I'm gonna keep this entire session more of how you can leverage this niche skill set to explore and get into IT with some better opportunities. We will see how these are all connected going forward. Now, let me spend a minute or two on this slide. This is kind of a pretty important one for us. So let's define data governance. Now you've heard so far was talking about storing data at the right place and right people having access to it. In generally put together, right? So data governance is a process, of course, an enterprise follows to assess, manage, use, improve, monitor, maintain, and protect your organization data to drive some business outcomes. In simple words, if you ask me, it ensures all that information we have at an enterprise wide is being managed by the right people for the right decision making. Getting into that, and I would like to talk about the framework and etc. So this is where I would like to take a pause. I know this particular session has been intended for a lot of enthusiasts who wanted to get into the data governance space, which means you must be working somewhere in IT in some fashion as an analyst or as a developer or as an architect or a software tester. You could wear any hat. And if I'm not wrong, there are a lot of students out here as well. So is it a rocket science to learn or what it takes to get into the data governance space? We shall see it, but I would like to touch base highly on a data governance framework and what this particular framework is all about, right? Now, again, I wanted to emphasize on one thing before I explain this. Data governance is not a project. It doesn't start on January 1st. It doesn't end on December 31st, right? It doesn't have enterprises. If you see the trend, enterprises who are implementing data governance, they shall not have a timeline associated to it, right? Because it is a process where you bring in a lot of people into it, and then eventually we formalize teams to build it. And to build it, what it takes, what is a framework like? And most of you here, if you ever worked in the ID space, you shall be able to quickly connect the dots here, right? So now if you see, data governance sits as an umbrella here, and then we have a variety of subdivisions which are part of it. I'll start from the one on the left, which is metadata management. Now, we all know how we define data. Now, what is metadata? Metadata is nothing but data about the data, right? For example, if you ask me, hey, Soumya, what do you do for a living? Now, I will start talking about me by stating, hey, I work for an XYZ company and I do this, I mentored this. I started giving a lot of information about me. So that's metadata, right? So Soumya, if you consider as a data, metadata is all what Soumya does. Now apply the same thing for an enterprise. If you go ahead and check, hey, what is Capital One Bank is all about? They start talking about what they do, what sort of investments they have, what are the assets they have, what's their GL general ledger like from last year, how much revenue they generated. That's all about all metadata, right? And the data quality management, which is also part of data governance, which is another highly rewarded division of DG. And we have data architecture management, data development, database operations management. A lot of you, if you ever heard about the word database, right? I'm pretty sure if you are coming from the ETL background or warehousing background, those are all generally part of data governance itself. There you could see that on the bottom left. We have data warehousing and the business intelligence management. If any of you students out here, if you're studying business analytics or data analytics, right? So this is where it comes in. So it's again a subsidiary of data governance, but you tend to do a specific piece out of it, right? And then we have some reference in master data management engagements. We have data security management, which is kind of booming lately based on a variety of privacy and protection regulations coming out across the globe. So we have GDPR from Europe, right? General Data Protection and Regulation. We have CCPA from California, stands for California Consumers Privacy Act. So as we have a regulation from India, right? Data protection regulation. We have few regulations from Singapore, Brazil, all the countries started adopting data protection regulations, right? So the government's enforcing enterprises or these Fortune 500 firms to start implementing it. So that has lately become a trend. Part of you slowly see out, if you start searching out today about data governance and the career prospects in the data governance space, you see a lot of enterprises outside started implementing it. But ideally, there's always a short on few things, right? So there is always a demand and supply. And I don't see the supply meeting the needs what these enterprises have. So we will talk about those things down the line. But on a high level, if you are in the future going to start your career in the DG space, you shall be probably touch basing any one of these subdivisions or maybe multiple subdivisions right out here. But no one can, I've been doing this for a little over 14 years now, but I'm very positive that I am not master of data governance, but I've been there and done a variety of aspects and proof of concepts for a variety of enterprises across the globe. We'll talk about those down the line as well. So I'll take you into the next slide. And before we go there, I would like to quickly check if there are any messages or questions from anyone we can answer. So I see a question coming in from Etash. So I'm a college freshman computer science student. Is this related to computer science or is it related to cybersecurity? That's a great question, Etash. So it is related to computer science. Cybersecurity, the name itself says it's more from a cyber governance point of view. So if you're a computer science student, it doesn't mean that you're going to be master of everything, but you certainly have to go out and start connecting the dots, right? So it's completely based on your personal interest, whether you want to be a developer or you want to be an analyst or you want to be a techno-functional guy or you want to do something else, right? So there are a variety of hats one can wear in the information technology space. And now connecting that back to the data governance, what hat you can wear, I have a dedicated slide for you, and I will emphasize more when the time comes in. So feel free, if you have any questions, please please type it down in the chat room, and we will also give you guys an opportunity at the end, so you can ask your questions if you're not typing in the chat room. Thank you. Given that, I will take you all into the next slide. So this is an operating model now I put together. Now, if you go back and check, so here we just spoke about governance and its associated branches. Now, right out here, we generally discuss a lot about the data governance operating model. Right now, what is this operating model and how enterprises does this data governance work? Right now, if you see on the top left, you have a color-coded few things. So data governance organization and enterprise certainly needed it. Roles and responsibilities. This is where we'll emphasize more on it in the next slide. And that's where you will see connecting the dots. If you're transitioning or if you would like to transition your career into the DG space, you're going to pick a specific role and see what it takes to become a specialist in it, right? And then there shall be some processes and workflows at an enterprise-wide, and then asset types and traceability. Now, as I mentioned earlier, enterprises consider data as an asset. So, and what asset type it is, and how we can trace this information for better decision making, we shall see that. And then, and if you could see that there is a role called data steward, and what they do is they perform data stewardship activities, and what they are and how they perform. This specific operating model talks about it in general. And again, they aligns and coordinates with any other external data management vendors or the platform providers. So for specific use cases, we go and build some lineages, or we do some scanning of the metadata, and we develop and build some DQ reports or the resolutions associated to the defects identified in the data quality space. We can also perform data modeling and integrations, right? So these are some of the variety of prospects we perform. Depends on what role you play, depends on what you wanted to do, depends on how this entire operating model can be implemented at an enterprise, right? Thank you. I'll quickly go back and check if there are any further questions. What is the potential growth of this field? Let's talk about it at the end, and I have a dedicated slide for that. Now let's talk about roles in the data governance. Now, this is the million-dollar question. Now, I'm coming out of school, or I'm already in the ID space. Now, I spent 10 years as an operations manager, or as a developer, or as an analyst, or I'm just a software tester. Now, can I transition into this? And my answer is yes, yes, and yes. And how are you going to transition it? And what are the skill sets it required? We're going to see that in a moment, but we should be talking about these roles, and then we will connect back to the skill set. Now, if you see on the top, in the bottom left corner, we have a CDO. Now, for most of the enterprises, CDO is a person or it's an office. So if you have a chief data officer or a chief data office, they often have the overall responsibility and accountability for your enterprise's data governance program, right? Someone who has experience in building projects at the enterprise level, and someone who comes from a strong data management background. You will see them growing into the CDO space. And then enterprises build committees or the councils, like the way if you take an association, at the beginning of this call, Geeta Garu has spoke about, or I think Sirisha Garu has spoke about HTCA and how many years we're doing. We have a general council or a committee, and everyone has a role in it, right? In a similar fashion, data governance councils and committees typically made up of executives from your business units, and we set up some policies and standards, and we shall try to make sure to resolve all the issues now across these business units, right? So that's the role of a data governance council or a committee. And there comes the data governance team. Ideally, if you're a starter, this is where you're starting, right? You can be part of a specific data governance manager, or under a specific program, whether you could be a data governance analyst or an architect or a developer. And I primarily focus if you are in the school, if you're transitioning, would like to transition into this role, you should definitely see yourself as a DG analyst. And if you're already a seasoned resource, been practicing, and we wanted to transition into the data management space, you could certainly be an architect or a steward based on your skill set, right? And then we have data stewards. Now, stewards are the people The name itself says they are responsible to safeguard the data, and they are responsible or in charge of implementing data governance policies and monitoring compliance within their specific line of businesses or across the enterprise. And then you have DQAs. They are nothing but data quality analysts and engineers, right? So they work hand in hand with the data governance teams and the data stewards. They try to fix the errors, or let me put it in that way. They are the ones who build these DQ metrics. They track these metrics, and if there are any gaps in it, they work with the stewards and the governance team to address those gaps and give the better visualizations or better uh, data-driven metrics to the senior leadership so they can take better decisions out of those quality metrics they generate, right? So this is how, in general, the roles in data governance you could see. So you can straight away, if you're a seasoned resource, you can connect yourself where you stand. And if you are coming right off school, and you could definitely be in any one of these roles. We'll talk about what it takes to be a data governance specialist or an analyst, right? Take you into the next slide. Yep, before we talk about the roles, let's talk about some of the popular misconceptions. And I know I've been preaching governance, I've been talking about it, but there are some popular misconceptions, if you ever heard about this. So let's start from the very first one that you see on my screen. It's a published repository of common data definitions. Even though if you're a seasoned resource, if you're in IT and if someone asks you, hey, I heard data governance is nothing but keeping all the data definitions in an Excel or in a tool of our enterprise choice or in a SharePoint or somewhere. No, that is not what data governance is, right? Times people think data governance is a program owned, managed, and led by IT stakeholders, right? The folks who are already working in the IT space, you will understand the terminology or the differences between the information technology and the business stakeholders, right? IT folks are nothing but anyone who's supporting from a technology point of view, within a project. And the business stakeholders are the folks, who have a sort of interest in the project's outcome, but they're primarily your sponsors or the ones or the subject matter experts for specific line of businesses, right? So generally, that's a misconception where I have seen a lot over the years, right? Again, it's only needed for certain line of businesses within an enterprise. That is not true. All the line of businesses within an enterprise, if someone is implementing it, they would try to implement it at an enterprise wide, right? And again, there is another popular misconception that is a lot of us think data governance is nothing but it concentrates only on the data quality and the master data management space, which is absolutely incorrect. We have data security part of it. We have metadata management part of it. We have operations management part of it, and your business intelligence and data warehousing as well, right? And for some folks, governance means privacy, which is absolutely wrong. Data governance and data privacy, these are the two. Again, privacy, I could say, is part of the governance, but they always complement each other, as an enterprise implementation. So these are some of the popular misconceptions. Now let's getting into the next one, what it takes to be a successful in the data governance space. So one, of course, pretty straightforward. It is analytical skills, right? So you don't need to be, have these crazy certifications or a great academic background. If you're analytical and if you have that pinch of common sense, and I see that you can be successful in it. And the second most important for me, I've mentored a little over 1,500 resources across the globe since the last 1 decade of 10 years. So what I've seen is if you are a great communicator, and I see plenty of opportunities to come into this space. And remember, I'm not talking about IT background, right? If you have an IT background, that is great. Preferably, it is preferable only, but it is not mandatory to kickstart your career in the governance space, right? And then you definitely should have an ability to influence people. Like I said, by this time you must have noticed, and a lot of things we do here is all communication, right? We speak with a set of business users or line of business subject matter experts. We preach, or we try to sell what governance is to them and how it should be implemented. And of course, we will strategize a plan and we shall go ahead and implement it. And before you do that, and if you are a people's person, and if you are talking to them, then look at point number 5. Now, if you remember the famous American TV series from Fraser Crane, there is a famous statement out there called "I am listening." So that is absolutely a perfect apt for a data governance specialist, right? You should always listen, and listen first before you make a comment, right? So that is a very important skill set as I see it. And you might think, hey, why can't we listen? We always listen to people. There is a strong difference between you listening to someone for the sake of listening, and you are actually listening and trying to contribute towards the problem your enterprise is trying to solve, or the use cases they wanted to implement. And of course, if you are a problem solver, you will definitely hit the bank. Wherein that's something most of the people look in are in generally analysts, and with that, if you come as a package with the data governance background, you shall be a superstar, right? And then of course, persistence brings results, and I strongly believe in the word I have written out there. So if you are persistent, and if you wanted to do the change, and of course you have to be committed to the cause and learn things in a strategic fashion, so that you can be a great communicator, have all the knowledge you wanted within the governance space, and be that problem solver, try to understand the use cases enterprises want to implement, and be persistent in your approach, and tell the world and why your approach is correct. And I don't see any reason why you will not be successful here, right? So these are all the things I personally think. If you're a great analytical person with communications, and if you have that ability to influence, preferably IT background, but it's not mandatory. And if you're a problem solver, which has those listening skills, and if you're persistent in your approach, this is the field I would highly encourage folks to come into. I'll take you into the next slide. And before that, I will take any questions if you have. So I'm going back to my chat. So someone asked a question, what is the potential growth of this field? So we'll talk about the numbers and all momentarily. How does automation play a role in master data management? So that's Srivat's. So I'll answer your question in a moment, because it's specific to MDM and how enterprises can save a lot of money in automating their master data management practice. And Mr. Srikant asked a question. I come from a product management background. Is data governance a technical discipline, or what are the prerequisites for DG? Srikant, that's another fantastic question. That's what we just touched based on. Apologies, I think I'm looking at the chat a minute late. And someone asked another question, your view on centralized data management versus federated data management. It's a fantastic question. Let's quickly talk about it right after I explain my next slide. So Srivat's, so I have 2 questions I need to come back to you. So I shall be in a minute or 2. Now let's quickly look into some of the popular tools implementing data governance. Now, I believe most of you here very familiar with Informatica, been out in the market for a little over 25 years. And Collibra is the market leader in the governance space. I believe when I started with them, I was fortunate enough, I was the first resource ever worked on Collibra's data intelligence platform. Right now, that's how they're calling it. But back in the days when we started, we were a small data governance company. And right now we have a market share of a little over $2 billion in revenue. And from Collibra, we have a little over 1,200 plus clients who are using Collibra as a product to implement data governance for their business use cases. And there are some of the small partners and the folks coming into the governance space. IBM, we're all very familiarized with, and they have a variety of products and professional services. They have a governance product as well. It's called the IGC, and eventually they're integrating that with Watson, which is another product they have built, and they're coming up with as a cataloging platform. Alteryx is also exploring the market, so as Talent. Irwin, they used to be this good old data modeling company, and they completely changed their direction by looking at the growth in the data governance space. Now they started calling themselves as the data governance company. So as Octopi, they address specific use cases within the governance space. So these are some of the popular tools we use to implement data governance. And then talking about the next slide, where I would like to touch base on the certifications or the associations for data governance. And this is something very important. If you are making some notes, I would suggest you to take a screenshot of this picture or keep it, right? So Collibra, and Collibra is a product, and they also have a university called Collibra University. They provide a lot of free resources for you to gain this knowledge and get yourself exposed to the data management space, primarily focusing on data governance and data privacy. And they have a certification. I highly encourage, if you're a student, I encourage you to go to university.collibra.com, register yourself, and start taking the level 1, level 2 certifications, and get yourself acquainted with it. And I can share more resources as we progress. And then DAMA International, Data Management International. So this is an association, probably the first in the world when they started, and they preach data. So that's the best statement to keep it, right? So they are the ones who brings these best practices in the data management space around governance or quality or privacy or security. And they have certain certifications. So if you ever interested to do, they're called a CDMP, stands for Certified Data Management Professional. You can do an associate certificate based on your experience and where you are in terms of your career path, and practitioner and master. So if you have 10 years or above, you are straight eligible for the CDMP master. But if you're in anywhere between 3 to 10, you can be a practitioner. Anywhere less than 3 or above, you can just take a CDMP associate. Now, I would encourage you to just explore it to see what they are and what they do. And there's one more association, I kept it at the bottom. They are called ADCG. It's the world's first association for data and cyber governance people, right? So to get most of the latest trends and updates about data and cyber governance, I highly encourage you to follow ADCG. They will give you a plethora of resources, news, trends, what's happening in the data side of the world, and how we are going. I'm going to go back to the questions before I walk you through on the next slide, which primarily talks about the revenue and the kind of salaries you can earn in the data management space, especially being an analyst. So I'm going back to the question. So someone asked a question, I think it's Itash. So is it related to cybersecurity? So my answer earlier was no, it is cybersecurity and data governance are two different paths altogether, right? And you could see that, is it beneficial? Can I draw a good handsome paycheck out of it? Or what can I do? So this is what I would say. The national average as of October 8th, 2020, that is $116,898. So this is where you will see if you are a mid-level practitioner with a base salary. These are the metrics coming out from from the recognized sources, such as Bloomberg and the other important ones like Gartner's and etc. Right, so this is where you shall be. And then an average, someone who doesn't have any years of experience, who wants to get into the governance space, if you kickstart it, I would see for starters, I see enterprises paying anywhere from $60,000 to $75,000. Depends on what background you come from and where you start. But on average, if you take all the seasoned people and experienced people, and the average is $116,000 per annum. Right, so that's mostly as a salary you would see you could potentially earn as a data governance analyst, right? And then of course there are some skill sets for you to explore, and anything you do, whether it is governance or security analyst or quality analyst. So analysis remains the same. That's a different topic altogether. What it takes to become that successful business analyst, and with that you will inject your governance skills into the mix. That's how you shall see yourself as the data governance analyst. We'll talk about it a different day. And so that's where the questions primarily. So I will go back to Mr. Srivat's question, which is how does automation play a role in master data management space? So Sri, master data management, if you notice that they typically enabled and executed at your enterprise-wide, right? So for a specific department's master data, if you are governing it, if you are controlling and maintaining and managing it, and enterprises would prefer to have it automated fashion. So in that way, of course, like the way I've presented my very second or third slide about the data, you will enable your enterprises to automate automate the models so that you can save some time. And for enterprises, time is directly proportional to money. So the more man hours or the business hours you save in investing into a specific practice, you definitely needed people for that. And that's how they see in automating all this stuff, right? So that's my take on it. I'm happy to speak with you if you have further questions on that one offline. And then I think Shrikant, we have answered your question, so I'll go back to the next one. Your view on centralized data management versus federated data management. See, I'm a big fan of having a centralized data management approach. Again, I'm not denying that enterprises should only follow centralized data management. Of course not, but I'm as a person, I'm a fan of it, right? I'll tell you why. So centralized data management versus federated. So in a federated space, let's say, I'm going to take some examples, right? Let's take a life insurance company. You have a variety of annuities you need to deal with. At the same time, you have requirements or the assets coming from different line of businesses. If you're doing it in a centralized fashion, so we can slice it down by a specific LOBs, and you can maintain all your data assets at one place. Whether I'm cataloging and bringing all the physical data dictionary stuff, such as nothing but your databases, your schemas, your tables, and your columns. And at times, business might not make absolutely any sense out of the technical terminology we use. They might gonna come to us and say, Soumya, I don't make any value out of the information you're showing. Can you translate that or convert that into business? Then at one place, I can give them back on what do I mean by these each columns, right? What are those data attributes are, or what are those data elements are, and how they can make a value out of it by implementing a line of business or a subject area. And within that, you have all your data entities and attributes logically grouped together. And if you can build a lineage right from technology to your business assets, right? So in that way, centralized, it helps stewards as well. So they can look at all that information under one specific community or domain, and they can manage it. So as in federated, you can ask me a question, hey, why can't we do it? You can certainly do the same thing in a federated space, but you're slicing it down into multiple org structures, right? It's all about how we are organizing our data at an enterprise. If your enterprise decided that we have a variety of data domains and we do not want to keep it everything at one place, we want to slice it down. Now you go to your data assets and you find all the data assets at one place for all these line of businesses, or the other way around. You have your line of business, and within that, all your glossary stuff, all your technology, and all your data assets at one place. It's purely an enterprise decision. Like I said earlier, I'm a fan of having a centralized data management approach. And now let's take the next question from Naga. What is SAP role in the data governance tools? So it's a good question. SAP, ideally, it depends on if your enterprise is an SAP shop and they only wanted to implement governance using SAP products. So SAP also has a data governance product with them, SAP DG, and you could use that to build it up. But if you're not an SAP shop, and if it doesn't have so much funds to procure a product, there are a variety of products available out in the market, like I've shown earlier, right? So there's a variety of tools. You can use Calibra, which is a little costly, but I think it is not too pricey though. And Informatica is coming up with great deals regarding their products such as Informatica Axon and EDCs for their governance and cataloging purposes. And of course, the good old IBM is there. SAP has their own modules if you're a manufacturing firm or an infrastructure-based firm, and if you have everything synced within SAP, then it is highly encourageable for enterprises to procure SAP DG as an integration, so you can go to your sources, bring your metadata, and start making value out of it. So it's an organization call. That's primarily it. What I see the questions. So I know in the intro, what is a recommended product for Oracle? So if you are going to catalog it, Sujay, it's a great question. If you're going to an Oracle basis and primarily primarily bring in all the metadata in an automated fashion, probably on a daily basis or on a weekly basis based on how you set up your jobs, I would encourage Calibra or Informatica. These are the two good tools for Oracle. If I have to emphasize one, it is Calibra. Probably, I think this is a time we could also enable audio for guests. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll do that. They can unmute themselves. I'm going to change the setting to unmute themselves and ask a question. Soumya garu.
Sure.
Yeah, I just did that. Participants, any one of you can try unmuting yourself and ask a question if you have any questions. Or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute for you.
Hi, this is Sujay.
Hello, Sujay.
Sorry, I missed the name of the presenter. I joined a little late. Is it possible to share this deck and or what is the agenda? Maybe if you could go back to the agenda slide.
Definitely. So I think you will have a live video of it available right after that. If I'm not wrong, Geeta or Sirisha can add to it.
Yeah, it's already on Facebook Live and TCA Houston Facebook. It's live in Facebook, and we'll upload this to YouTube. I'm going to put the YouTube channel here. If you can go to that YouTube channel, we'll upload this to YouTube. TCA Telugu Cultural Association Houston YouTube
Great.
channel.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have kept the contact information just in case if any one of you would like to touch base and talk more about it, and feel free. Drop a note or an email. Or that's my LinkedIn. Okay, so we'll take the next question if there are any coming in.
It's Soumya. This is Kunal this side. I have a question for you.
Sure. Go ahead, Kunal.
Oftentimes, thank you. Oftentimes, actually, we see governance is, not necessarily about systems and processes and technology capability for an enterprise. Oftentimes, we see that the main challenge that lies behind is the culture for the organization, the kind of commitment and financial investment that a specific line of business or an enterprise wants to make, or even sometimes, the inertia kind of thing, like if a body at rest wants to stay at rest, body in motion wants to stay in motion. So if you could help provide some insights into how does one take it in a top-down and a bottom-up approach together, and provide that initial thrust for a data governance program to move across in a non-invasive way for an organization, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Great. So that's one. Do you have a second question, Kunal?
No, I think this is the one for now.
Already.
Thank you.
So I think that my answer lies in your question itself. That is, if an enterprise doesn't have that culture as a data-driven or a data management, then one, of course, it's the role of the people who are involved in the process, right? So it is up to your CDO office on how they can inject that culture into your enterprise. So whether it is from a top down or from a bottom up, depends on the previous culture and depends on how their hierarchy has been set up within an enterprise. But I would suggest, it's again a personal experience of mine in my previous implementations and the support I have given to a variety of clients over the years. So that level of maturity and the commitment has to come from our executive leadership board. They need to understand the importance of having a data governance program. Like I mentioned earlier, it is not a project, it is a program, right? Having that data governance enablement in our executive leadership. And from there, if it can come down, right? For example, if I come to you and ask you a favor, you might not going to do it because, we might be strangers at this moment. But if your manager or someone coming in and ask you, Kunal, this is what we would like to implement. What are your thoughts about it? Then you'll definitely spend your time on it and give your 2 cents back to them, right? So I would prefer to have it at top down, but at the same time, and I've seen enterprises grooming their the general day-to-day users from a governance side, and then having their buy-in to participate in it, and then taking it to the leadership in selling that thought of bottom up, stating our resources and the support groups wanted to be part of a DG initiative. I've seen both, but primarily if you ask me what is most successful, I would say a top-down approach is the most successful one. And of course, both has pros and cons.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So follow-up question on that. So I actually in the past worked in the data governance role once. And I felt there was, when we start putting it top down, so the leaders for a line of business or for a business process or a subject area, they're totally on board of having, governance in place. When you go up to a director level, they're also on board. But when the rubber hits the road, when we go and talk to the managers or to the business analysts about where data is and how do we enable the framework for them, there is an organization politics kind of environment that starts coming into picture. Like, I don't think we need data governance right now because it's not stopping my work currently kind of conversations. So is there a specific way that one can tackle such situations, or does it necessarily have to go to go to your manager and have conversations with them and pull it up from there?
It's a fantastic question, Kunal. Thank you so much for bringing that in this platform. So my answer to that is very, very straightforward, right? So for example, you go to someone and then you're preaching them, hey, we wanted to implement governance and we wanted to scan your sources. Can you give me access to it, or can you guide me on what are your day-to-day activities in terms of the metadata management, right? The first answer is, or the first reaction to that is, it's a change you're bringing in or asking them to build a process. So when like the rock has been steadily going for over a period of time. Now someone else coming in and start hammering on top of it, right? So the general human reaction is, you know what, Kunal, I think we can set up some time and talk about what you want, right? And
Sure.
then definitely they will ask you, you know, probably in that conversation, so what do you want to achieve out of it, right? We are doing well, our metrics are showing great, and you know, I think we're in a good shape, and we really don't have time nor the resources to give it to you, so someone can work with you in providing all the metrics you needed or the accesses you needed, or giving access to them so that you could tell them that, hey, I think we can perform a change, or you can work efficiently by enabling us to look into your processes, and so that, you know, we can help you on with better data governance. So yes, people acknowledge to it, and yes, a lot of people they don't. And now those conversations, I've been in those conversations where we are not having any action items out of those meetings, and but we're constantly getting into those discussions, going back and forth on, yes, we want to come in, and no, we don't want to come in. So they will keep you in that phases, right? So that's where I think your analysis skill set will come in. That's where you need to have a strong reason to, you know, sell governance to them. You certainly have to do your homework, understand the culture, which is important, right? Now, let's assume if you come to me and ask, hey, Soumya, within your company enterprise, we wanted to implement governance. I've been working in this space, let's assume with an enterprise for 10 years. Now, all of a sudden, you're coming and you're introducing change. I might not be reciprocative, right? So I will ask you a lot of questions. So I think that's one of the reasons I said persistence is a key. Now you certainly have to have that and make sure that you go back to the teams with proper business justification and how a good governance initiative can help them in a long run. I know these are easy to tell and difficult to implement, but I said, like I said earlier, it is not impossible, and we have been there and done that. I'm pretty sure if you can acquire the right skill set, understand the culture of your enterprise, and of course, more than that, understand the people, I think you will definitely see the fruits soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Ready. I'll take any further questions if you have, or if we need to enable your audio, please let us know.
We have couple more questions in chat, Andy.
Sure. Okay, let me go back there. So I have a question from Sujay. What are the 3 recommended data governance products for cloud-based IT landscapes spanning across Oracle, SAP, AWS? So Sujay, I have seen fantastic success in cataloging, especially for cloud-based IT landscapes, such as I've used Calibra primarily for Oracle, SAP, AWS, Azure. I would definitely say Calibra, knowing their landscape, and but just for Google, right? I believe they do not have an out-of-the-box mechanism to go ahead and connect to the source and bring it on. I think that's where they use their custom integrations using MuleSoft. But if Google is not in your scope, it is definitely Calibra, because you have one place for governance and cataloging. But if you are exploring the other side of it, I would say no one can beat Enterprise Data Catalog from Informatica. But they have their cons. That is, their governance is not as matured and as user friendly as Calibra. So it both has pros and cons. But if we certainly have to weigh in only based on what I see on the chat room, so it is Calibra. But if you're bringing something else and you don't want to do any customizations, then we should explore the other things which are enabled out. Alation also comes into the same space. So that's another cataloging platform you can explore to explore for the cloud-based IT landscapes. Hope I answered your question. If not, feel free to unmute yourself and ask or type it in the chat room. And
Yeah, thanks for that. I think you did answer my question very well. Thank you. Um, when you say cataloging, what exactly does it mean in the data governance space?
so as simple as that, right? So you go to, have you done recently any shopping?
Right. Okay. So you mean item catalog, more like item
Exactly. So,
cataloging?
exactly. So you perform your data cataloging, right? So you build data sets out of it. It's completely up to you. It doesn't, enterprises really don't need to build data sets, but cataloging is something which enables you to bring all your organization data at one place, right? So you can go in, search for it and find out. Let's say if I wanna buy a cell phone from Amazon, all I do is go to Amazon and in the search field, I'll type cell phones or iPhones, right? So I could see a list of phones coming in a similar space. Enterprises, they lately, that's a trend, right? Using their AI, they catalog it and they source it at one place.
Okay. Okay. So this is probably very useful when in an IT landscape having e-commerce sort of a portal on cloud, right?
Yes, yes, definitely.
So master data management across, say, customer data or item data, all that.
Yeah, yeah, and remember that you don't really capture and manage the actual data which has all the PIA information, right? Or even any information related to customer. You're only targeting the metadata. You only catalog the metadata, and you keep that metadata at, available for your enterprise users at fingertips. But you're really actually not giving the real data inside that. So that's the beauty of metadata management.
Oh, okay. This is only metadata. All right.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
sure. So I'll take the next question from Sri Reddy, I believe. So that is, these days organizations moving towards cloud, which is correct, and SaaS types of solutions. How is data governance expected to work in those companies? I think my answer again goes back to the previous one, Sri Reddy. So that is enterprises. If your organization is moving into cloud, right, and if you're seeing that your enterprise procuring solutions which are primarily SaaS type, the governance, having a closed monitored governance will help enterprises to better yield the results in terms of privacy or security, right? So you have, let's say your data is available on AWS or Azure, and you really don't need to be in your enterprise's network to access a specific data set. I might be able to open that on my personal laptop, having the right credentials, right? Now, if someone is not governing that particular stuff, that's more related to security, though, data security. So that's another key, right? So you have challenges. It's not so easy to move just into the cloud and let's move the entire enterprise into SaaS. Yes, it is possible, but by having the right precautions and the right strategy in place, you could see that there is a specific business model being implemented by these Fortune 500 firms by going into cloud. It's just not replacing their infrastructure, but making sure that they have the right people accessing their data centers and making sure that they have all the security in place, and then they're slowly moving into it. Of course, at times they go and they partner with Microsoft or Amazon or any other cloud open source platforms to see where you stand, or you need to have your dedicated data centers, or you can partner with someone whom you trust and have those policies in place and doing it. So either way, whether you are doing it on cloud or locally, your data has a role to play, and it is enterprise's job to govern it in a right fashion. I hope I answered your question.
Hello, Soumya. This is Srivatsa. Thanks for answering my earlier two questions. I had another one follow up on slightly, again, talking about data culture, right?
Right.
What have you seen work in your experience on enabling data culture, especially bottoms up from an organization perspective?
So my answer for that, Srivats, that is, we shall not be able to bring change overnight, right? So we definitely have to have a strategic plan and having teams enabled and have that awareness with them. And from there, of course, you are building it up by LOB approach it, or you could approach it from an SME point of view. So either ways, I have seen enterprises failing faster if they know that they're going to fail. They would love to fail faster and learn from it and redo the same thing, but they're persistent in doing it. So that is key, right? So having that program in place is important. At the same time, implementing it in a right fashion is equally important.
Sure, thank you.
Sure.
Hello, Soumya.
Hello, Prabhu.
Yeah. I have a quick question. Are you seeing particular industries giving more importance to data governance than some other industries? My question is around: are you seeing banking, finance, and insurance industries and the companies and the organizations in those industries giving more importance, probably because of the risk factor involved, whereas in some other industries they might not be of that.
That is correct, Prabhu. Yeah, that is absolutely correct. Let's assume if I'm going to fine you if you don't do this particular work by tomorrow, right? You will definitely incline towards doing it ASAP, right?
Sure.
If you really ask me, we have a famous saying, right? America runs on donuts,
Yeah.
so like Dunkin' Donuts saying. But
Yeah.
if you ask me, America runs on fear. Fear that what happens if my data is compromised? What happens if I'm not governing things in a right fashion? What happens if there is a data breach, right? So people are scared, and of course that's why the regulations are in place. And given that, your healthcare, banking, financial, and insurance, these BFSI, these are the two key players implementing governance for a reason. Right? Now, take for example GDPR. Now, if you are GDPR and Google are two best examples, right? Or a CCPA and Google. Now, if you are not compliant with the regulation, if you doesn't have a proper governance and privacy frameworks implemented across an enterprise, and if you're compromising your customers' data, the fines are in the form of anywhere from a minimum of $250 to a maximum of $2,500, right? Now you multiply that by the number of records you will get compromised. Let's say there is a data breach happened and you are not in compliant with whether CCPA or a GDPR. So the European nations have a right to not to fine you or have that lawsuit on you. Right now, let's assume you compromised 250 or let's say as simple as that 100,000 or a million records. Now multiply that million with 250. So you're looking at a $250 million in fine just for one incident. Now that's a hefty fine. Now it's better you implement it and be in compliant rather than fining it. Now, is it applicable for other enterprises? Absolutely, yes. I see retail enterprises like Walmart, they're one of the biggest investor into data governance lately, right? They're doing these implementations. I've seen Nike doing it. I've seen other very popular brands doing it. I see Amazon doing it. I see Alibaba doing it. I see, if you heard about a firm called MSI, oh no, sorry, it's PMI, Philip Morris International. They sell the world's 15% of tobacco. All your, if anyone smokes, all your Marlboros and all that stuff, they've been built by developed and designed by PMI, and they're doing their R&D is close to $1 billion on governance initiatives. So they're kind of huge in the European nations, right? So they're doing it. So I've seen it's slowly, like Corona, it's slowly going from one enterprise into the other enterprise, and people started taking it very seriously.
Okay, thanks, Soumya.
Sure. Right, any other questions I can answer? No, yes, maybe, nope.
Please unmute yourself if you have to ask questions, or you can add the question to the chat.
Okay, I see we don't have any further questions at this time.
Okay.
Unless I'm missing something in the chat room, Shirisha.
No, nothing, Andy. There are no new questions.
The question, okay.
No.
So
So we can end with the thank you note from Geeta Garu, and then we can close the session, I think.
Hi, Soumya Garu. Thank you so much for bringing the session forward for Houston audience, Andy. Great session. Actually, you simplified data governance to a large extent where all could relate. People who work in the field also can get their questions answered. So you did a great job in presenting, and thank you so much for doing this for our members. I'm sure the recording will be available, and for those who missed, they can catch up. It was a fantastic session. I think it should have reached more students and more of our members, but certainly the recording will be available. Thank you for hosting this session for us.
All right, thank you, Geeta, and thank you everyone for being here on a Saturday afternoon. I appreciate your interest and enthusiasm. Like I said, any questions you have, feel free to reach me in the email or LinkedIn, and I'll do my best to answer it and help you if you would like to kickstart your data governance journey. Thank you once again. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Soumya Garu. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Soumya.
Thank you all for attending.
All the hosts.
Sirisha will wait for a few minutes.
Yeah, we'll wait for a couple of minutes and then we'll close the session.
Yeah.